1. In the very early 2000s, I was a freshman in college and couldn't afford to stay at the dorm, so I stayed with my parents about an hour away and drove to campus for all my classes. College was expensive, and so were books and food and gas and everything else. I got a job at the best place I knew of that would work around my schedule, the campus bookstore. Plus, I got a discount on my books. Most of the employees had been there for a while. Who'd want to give up an employee discount on textbooks? And it wasn't common for incoming freshmen to get a job there. But as luck would have it, they needed employees because they got a franchise license for a popular coffee establishment. Not like a nice coffee house or anything, but an American fast food drive-thru. Make up their own coffee language to be trendy, location on every corner, smooth jazz playing with the CDs for sale. Don't care about the quality and the only commodity, and would sell the stars just to make a few bucks kind of coffee shop. This was part of the bookstore, and therefore part of the college campus. They were supposed to work with my school schedule. For the most part, they did. I had time off from my classes, but I didn't have time to hang out with friends, didn't have time to study for my classes, barely had time to sleep. I mostly worked alone. I think there were maybe 3 other people that worked at the coffee shop, and we all had different shifts. As I had a lot of morning classes, I worked the closing shift. We had certain hours the bookstore would be open, and the coffee shop was to be open as long as there were customers. If someone was still shopping when we made the closing announcement and came over and ordered a coffee, I was supposed to make it and serve them. After the last customer was gone, I would clean all the machines, wash all the dishes, etc. Well, I decided that the best way to leave on time was to get a head start, so I would start shutting down and cleaning about 15 minutes early. One night, just before close, the store manager took notice. I'll call him Dilbert because that's what he looked like. So Dilbert reminds me of the official policy that I can't start cleaning until the customers are gone. Oh, and why don't I put on a CD and play some nice music for the customers to enjoy? Cue malicious compliance. I pulled out my personal CDs instead of the pre-selected ones next to the stereo. I played my favorite tracks from Metallica to Megadeth with some old-school Aussie thrown in every once in a while. The regular stragglers didn't come by for some reason, and I got to clean and even leave at a reasonable time. Now, this was not the store's speaker system, but just a small stereo with a couple of portable speakers. So I got away with it that night. I loved the new system so much, it became a regular part of my closing schedule. When it would get late, the heavy metal would come on, and I got to go home earlier. I started to like my job again. After about a week, Dilbert comes by, probably to be a jerk and order a coffee for himself after closing, when he hears my music.
What the hell is that?
You suggested I play music for the customers.
Not this. Good music.
These are my own personal CDs. This is my music.
Well, play something else, or maybe don't play music at all.
Not really any fallout, except I couldn't listen to metal at work anymore. I eventually quit one night because I was tired staying late when I had early classes the next morning. 2. I work part-time at Arby's. We're known for our roast beef, which is sliced to order with a slicer. Our beef and cheddar and roast beef sandwiches are the most popular, so when you're in the kitchen, you're going to be using the slicer a lot. I am 17. Legally, you have to be 18 to operate it, but at my location, we don't listen to it at all. My general manager pretty much says, "As long as you don't fuck around with it, I don't care." We all know the dangers of a slicer, and we know not to treat it like a toy. So, I'm a great deal younger than the subject of this story, Rebecca, who was born in 51. She thinks teenagers are just incompetent children. She has it out for me, and on some days it feels like she is analyzing my every move to criticize me if I make a mistake. Why does she have a grudge against me? Because she has a god complex, and I put my foot down. Today we had 2 people in the kitchen, me and Rebecca. Fun. Now, our menu isn't completely composed of beef products. To name a few, we have the brisket, Reuben, gyros, which sometimes have beef, but I digress, turkey ranch and bacon, and a slew of wraps. And that's not even our full menu. That's just to give you an idea of how much more we have than the beef. At one point, we got someone who ordered 4 briskets at once. One person can only do so much, so when I saw that Rebecca was struggling to handle it by herself, I decided to come over and help. I take the bottle of mayo from the tray and start putting it on the buns that require it. Rebecca saw this, and instead of working together, she decided it would be a good idea to rip the bottle from my hands, push me to the side, and say,
"Now you just stay over at the slicer. I got this, okay?"
Okay. So I go over to the slicer. I look up at the monitor. I see that someone up at the front counter had ordered 3 roast beef sandwiches. So I quickly make those and send them out. I look back up, drive-thru wants a beef and cheddar double. I make it and send it out. Look back up, nothing that requires roast beef. I do, however, see that there are several different sandwiches not containing beef. The type of stuff you have to focus on. The type of stuff you can't do on your own. I figured, hey, she wanted me to stay at the slicer, so that's exactly what I did. After double-checking to make sure there wasn't anything that I needed to do with beef, I sat down on the floor, brought my phone out, and started browsing Reddit. About 10 seconds later, which doesn't seem like long, but in fast food every second counts, I look back up at her. She is running back and forth, scrambling to even get one thing done, because she's trying to do everything at once. I look up. A roast beef slider is up on the monitor, so I stand up, slice some beef, measure out 1.5 ounces, and set it on the counter next to her, since her side of the kitchen is where the slider buns and cheese and stuff are at. So it's her responsibility, since she wants that part of the kitchen to herself. It was at this point I made eye contact with her and smiled. It may have seemed like an "I'm happy to be helping you" smile, but it was more of an "it's amusing to me that your instructions are backfiring horribly" smile. I then sat back down and continued fiddling with my phone. Now, my manager Julie wasn't happy about the fact that Rebecca was pushing me away and not letting me help. Julie actually found my reaction to the situation funny, but she wasn't laughing while she chewed Rebecca out for being a bitch and shoving me out of the way. 3. Context. I am a field hockey umpire. Generally, if someone has been fouled but they are able to retain possession or have a chance to score a goal, I am allowed to call play on if there is sufficient advantage. Story. I was umpiring a semi-final. There is a certain person we'll call Bob who would constantly complain that he was getting fouled all the time. Bob was a very good player, so the opposition would always gang up on him when he had the ball. Because he was very skilled, a lot of the time when he was fouled, he was able to dribble past the opposition and get the ball into his attacking area or be able to have a shot on goal. As I already mentioned, Bob was a complainer. He'd constantly cry about the free hits he should have been awarded, while completely disregarding the fact that he gained the advantage and even scored a goal when I let play go on after he was fouled. At halftime, his team were losing 2-1. Bob comes up to me and starts ranting about how useless my umpiring is and that I missed lots of fouls on him. I assured him that I saw those fouls, but I let play go on and that he gained sufficient advantage, so I was confused as to why he was complaining. He then said, "You have to call every foul." I said, "Okay, I'll make sure that I call every foul." Malicious compliance mode activated. During the second half, I made sure that I called every foul for Bob's team, regardless if they had advantage or not. Then they had to bring the ball back to the spot of the foul. Meanwhile, it gave the opposition time to get back and organize their defense. His teammates were getting very frustrated, but he was content knowing that he got his way until there was about 3 minutes left in the game. Bob had the ball at the top of the circle. He was about to have a shot on goal when the opposition fouled him. When his stick was swung back, I blew my whistle as quickly as I could. Then half a second later, he hit the ball and it goes sailing into the net. Because I had already blown my whistle, I stopped play and the goal was not allowed. Bob was irate. He comes storming towards me yelling, "Why didn't you play the advantage?" I replied, "You said that I had to call every foul, and that's exactly what I have been doing this entire second half. That was a foul. So I called it. Bob continues ranting and starts cussing. So I told him that I wasn't tolerating his dissent and gave him a yellow card, a 5-minute suspension, meaning he was going to miss out on the last few minutes of the game. His team were still losing 2-1. If I had let the advantage play, the score would have been 2-2 and the game might have gone into extra time, meaning that his team would have had a chance to win and take part in next week's grand final. But because I maliciously complied with his request and Bob's team were down to 10 men, he had to sit and watch his team lose the game and their place in the grand final, all because he wouldn't let me play advantage. Just to clarify, it is not part of the rules that I have to play advantage, it is just something I can do to keep the game flowing. If someone doesn't want me to play advantage, I am able to oblige. Bob was the captain of his team. I am not allowed to talk to the whole team during a game. I can only communicate to the whole team through the captain, and since Bob was the captain, he was speaking for the whole team. I didn't know that Bob was going to score with that shot on goal. I was blowing my whistle quickly to all fouls, and unfortunately for him, that shot ended up going in the net. 4. I work for a water company carrying out repairs on burst water mains on an on-call basis of 1 week every 2 months. This particular job happened about 8 years ago. We get a call out that a major pipe feeding a large housing estate had burst and needed repairs ASAP. We head to the yard about 11 p.m. at night to collect our gear and get the plans and drawings of other utilities in the area of the work. We arrive on site, set up the traffic management as per regulations, speak with the inspector that called us out for an exact location of repair. Too much water to mark in the usual way. We set up our barriers and work lights around the work area. We get out our steel saw and cut a couple of meters of tar out, ready to start breaking the tar out of the road. Just as I started the jackhammer going, Mr. Sleepyhead comes chomping down the street in his slippers and dressing gown, looking rather perplexed. Took my ear protection off to see what he wanted. I could tell it wasn't to offer as a coffee. He then proceeded to tell me, "You can shut that fucking thing off and fuck off until it's daytime." I explained that it was emergency work and that we wouldn't have 600 properties get up and have no water in the morning, so it has to be completed now. And our work was fully understood by the council and the police. We then get the usual bollocks of, "Do you know who I am?" Bleh. I refrain from telling him that I know exactly who he is. He's an irritating arsewipe who was stopping us from working. He then starts turning the air supply off, so I can't use the jackhammer, which was ever so slightly annoying. He then stated that he knew the chief inspector and would have me arrested if I carried on. I said that I have to carry on as per my emergency work order, and if he carried on obstructing us, I'd have to call the police to get the job finished. Needless to say, he did it again and said, "Call who you like, I'll have you arrested and sacked by morning." By now I was tired, cold, and wet and starting to get slightly irritated by his actions. So cue malicious compliance. I go back to the van and ring the phone to explain that we are out carrying out emergency work and are being prevented from completing it by one of the local residents, and explain what he's doing to stop us working. He stomps off in his now soggy slippers and I poured a coffee. About 40 minutes later, headlights appear in the distance, so I thought, great, just what we need so we can get done and recharged by 6 a.m. Hopefully. Mr. Sergeant and Mr. Constable arrive and come for a chat to find out what the fuck is going on, and his words, why the fuck we're doing it after midnight in the first place. So I proceeded to explain that the water main had burst and we needed to get the supply restored by 6 a.m. to save between 1,500 to 2,000, only a slight exaggeration, people having no water in the morning when they get up. He then realized the job needed to be done and toddles off for a word with Mr. Sleepyhead. Before long, we can hear the shouting from down the street. It then goes quiet, and he comes back down to us to explain that the guy was a sandwich short of a picnic, a British euphemism for a nut job, and that they're going to have to hang around in case Mr. Sleepyhead started playing stupid games. So we fire up the compressor and start jackhammering again, with my back towards the police car to save anything pinging off in that direction. A few minutes later, the machine driver toots its horn to get my attention. Mr. Sleepyhead had only come down the road carrying a piece of timber, lumber for you American folks, and was in the process of getting arrested for disturbing the peace. I honestly laughed so hard I nearly pissed myself. Who the fuck is that stupid when the police are around? Just in case anyone is interested, we were back on by 5:30 a.m. and had a coffee off Mr. Sleepyhead's neighbor, who was highly amused because he'd seen the whole incident out of his window. His only disappointment was his surveillance cameras didn't pick up the video, and he only had the audio to share with his mates. Five. Quite a few years ago, I worked in commercial parks and grounds maintenance. Think industrial-sized ride-on lawnmowers. It was a good place to work. Reasonable salary, good conditions, plenty of optional overtime. It could at times be quite labor-intensive, but mostly a pretty cruisy job. We had a condition of employment that included commuter use of the work vehicle. Use of the work vehicle to and from work at no monetary cost to us. The provision of this condition was that we started and finished on the job. 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. This really suited me as I geographically lived a reasonable distance from our main depot. I often drove past our work sites to get to the depot. It was a win-win. Special note, the truck had to be parked off-street for insurance reasons, which I could accommodate. This condition meant my employer gained on average an hour's more work from me every day. This worked fine for a few years. My team leader and I were good friends. He trusted me unconditionally. I was a good worker and always maintained my areas to a very high standard. Always helped out my colleagues if and when they needed. I always finished a job even if it went over my finish time, and never put in for overtime. My team leader retired. I get moved under a different team leader. New team leader and I didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things. He always seemed out to get me for anything he could. I don't remember any specific reason for him not liking me. It was just one of those situations, I guessed. He didn't like me. I didn't like him. A few months later, it's springtime. Grass is growing like crazy. I took a sick day and did some work around my house. During the spring season, I would also take the mower home, as I had the parking space. A lot of other workers didn't. This was agreed by my employer. On my day off, I had parked the work truck and mower at the front of my house, so I had access to my backyard, still off-street, mind you. Moved it back a few hours later. I got to work the following day, received a phone call at about 9:30 a.m. Team leader and coordinator want to talk to me about a work issue. They come out on site, and the conversation went something like this.
As a condition of maintaining commuter use of the work vehicle, you must park the vehicle off the street.
I can and I do, have done for years.
We have a reason to believe that you don't.
What evidence do you have to support your claim? He pulled out some photos of the truck parked outside my house on my day off. Who took these?
I'm not at liberty to disclose that for privacy reasons.
Okay, that's bullshit, but whatever. I was on sick leave that day. I needed access to my backyard. The vehicle was there for 2 to 3 hours maximum. It was parked off-street when I was finished in my yard. Whoever took those pictures must have taken them during that time. It was parked securely overnight, as it is every night.
As you can see, these photos don't show that. We don't trust that you're doing the right thing, so we're giving you a first warning for breaking the vehicle policy, and you'll need to drop the mower and truck back at the depot after you finish work. You no longer have access to bringing the truck home.
I dispute your warning. It's complete bullshit. I'm finishing work now. I can't work like this knowing someone is spying on me, taking opportunistic photos. I'm dropping the mower back at the depot. I need the truck to get home tonight, but you can make arrangements for someone to pick it up tomorrow from my place. It seems someone knows my address. I'm going to call HR on my way home to set up a meeting tomorrow. I have nothing more to say to you two. I packed up and left. I have CCTV cameras, so I went straight home to investigate. The photos were time and date stamped. Lo and behold, the photographer was my team leader with the coordinator in tow. Next day, I meet with HR and told them the story. They didn't know anything about my supposed warning. I provided my own photos of the team leader and coordinator taking photos outside my house, followed by the vehicle properly parked on my property. Malicious compliance. Meeting is called between all parties. Mr. Green, we apologize for the way you've been treated, etc., 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 another story for another day. You have not been issued any kind of warning, and you can maintain your existing vehicle condition, as you've shown you've done nothing wrong. No thanks, I'm happy to use my own vehicle to get to and from work from now on. Despite being innocent, I have no trust in these two, so I'll start and finish at the depot from now on. I won't be doing 1 minute of extra work for you guys ever again. Thanks. 2 weeks later, the team leader put out a call for overtime as we were so far behind in getting non-compliance warnings for grass being too high in high-priority public parks. Myself and my colleagues said we couldn't work any overtime. They all hated how I had been treated and dug in behind me. My employer had to pay a contractor to come and mow the grass on a weekend at a huge cost to them. I left shortly after that. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 99. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like and subscribe. Comments are also super duper appreciated. Alright, let's see. Do we have any... Right, there's a birthday shout out tomorrow. Oh no, wait, we do have a very important birthday shout out today. This was not requested, but it's happening anyway. And that goes to one of my moderators, Barry. She has Barry in most of her names. It's easy to recognize. Will not say how old she is, but somewhere between 1 and 9,000. We shall not speculate any more than that. Well, Barry dear, I hope you have a delightful birthday, and if you don't, tell me why and I'll sort them out for you. And apart from that, I'm just going to have a little sing-song just for you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Barry. Happy birthday to you. Alright, and I think we're going to wrap things up there for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.